Let's welcome to the stage RupkathaBhowmick, the editor of IMAGES RetailME, to hold a fireside chat with a 17-year-old, honestly, I've got genes older than that, a 17-year-old second-generation entrepreneur, SarishaVed, the founder of F5 Global, part of the Apparel Group. Ladies, the stage is yours.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us at the Internet Commerce Summit. Yes, I think she is perhaps the youngest entrepreneur in the room, aren't you?
I think so.
And a little bit, a very, very brief backstory about F5 and Sarisha herself before we get started with our conversation here. So the seeds of this brand was, Sarisha was thinking about it when she was merely 14 years old. And it all started as a school project and turned into this beautiful brand that it is today, F5 Global. That's exactly what we are going to discuss. And Sarisha, this is the first conference that you're speaking at. I hope you're excited. I am.
I'm extremely excited. I honestly think everything is about taking new challenges and new risks, so...
Amazing, amazing. So then let's dig in. Let's get started with your story. You know, there's a reason why we've chosen to call this title, this session, from the moment of epiphany to building a responsible business. Can we get started with that moment of epiphany, from where it all started?
So when I was 14, January of... So I'm not too good with years, but it was in January where my family and I had gone to Nadwara. And we had actually gone to go and pray. And one day my dad was like, okay, we have to go to the school and we're going to go give them clothes, shoes, pens, books, food, everything that he could think of. The 14-year-old in me was like, there's no way I want to sit in a car for 3 hours just to get to school to give kids this. I was on the ride there and I was on my phone on TikTok and bored out of my mind and wanting to kill my parents for ever taking me there. And that's the utter truth. But I then got there and they had actually, I looked at the kids and then I had a conversation with the principal. And I asked him, I was like, so like, how long does it take them to get here? It takes me 8 minutes to get to school every morning. It takes them a 4-hour walk. And then he mentioned to me that it took them 3 hours, well, they waited 3 hours just for us to come and give them these things that I use on a daily basis. Which to me was like, okay, this is something I actually want to make a difference with, because one thing I've always thought is that education is the most important. If you can give people money, you can give people everything, but if they can't earn for themselves, then they won't be able to start a family. And that goes down generations, I think, for sure.
Absolutely. And what did you do about it? I mean, of course, you gave some supplies to these children, but what was the next step that you took?
So it then came to my personal project for IB, where they told me, okay, you have to pick something where it's your own initiative, you have to do it. Some of my friends wrote a book, some of my friends made an app. I chose to start the line called Tees for Fees, where 100% of the profits goes back to children's education. And we started with that, and I think that's where F5 started. I honestly love the idea, and I love doing it. When I first started, obviously, it was a pain for me. It was a school project, and I was like, I really don't want to continue this. But after working so hard to launch that one line, I knew that I wanted to do more.
And you know, it's interesting. You could have chosen anything else. Like you said, some of your friends chose books. Were you seriously interested in fashion, given the background, given that you're a second-generation entrepreneur now from the and your parents set up Apparel Group? Did the interest stem from there, that you chose fashion, which is a very crowded market?
I think for sure, from my dad taking me to meetings when I was 10 years old and making me work as a cashier when I was 12 in one of the biggest sales. I think obviously it did come from that, where I'd always grown up with fashion around me and it was always business. So I knew that that was something I wanted to do in the future. I just didn't know it was this early.
How has the journey been so far?
The journey has had its ups and downs, and I think that's with any business. And I feel like if you don't take the risks, you're never going to learn. My parents have always told me that. They're like, I asked them for advice, and they're like, you do what you think. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, you learn from it, and you try again next time. So I think that's pretty much it. And we hit a few huge milestones this year. I'm going to start with when we raised over 150,000 dirhams now for children's education with Red Crescent. We also launched a pop-up store in London over the summer on Oxford Street. And the biggest one of all, we opened our first flagship store in Dubai Hills Mall.
Sure.
So I think that's
very exciting.
our biggest thing.
And it's an omni-channel brand, so you have to give equal importance to both channels, or if I may, even social media. So could you take us through a few things that you do on a regular basis to ensure good amount of engagement across your channels? And also, please feel free to share some challenges that you face there.
I think social media is the biggest thing. If you're on social media, you're everywhere. My friends, for example, will go on TikTok and spend 8 hours of their day on TikTok. And I'm like, we need to be on TikTok. If we're not, then we're not engaging with our customers. So I think that's one of the biggest things. And yeah, of course, I think giving importance to social media as well as the brick and mortar store, as well as e-commerce is extremely important, because every customer has a different, what's the word for it? Has a different way they want to shop. And if I'm trying to target a Gen Z customer, it would be social media and e-commerce. Whereas if I'm trying to reach a millennial, it would be brick and mortar. So yeah, I think they're all extremely important.
Diverse. Yeah. How do you go through this whole process of curating your collections, choosing who to collaborate with?
So I think it's very, very difficult. A lot of my ideas stem from London, especially, and those backstreet shops in London. I think they have the best fashion there. And with collaborations, I think it's companies that have the same ethics and values as us as well. And I feel like if they don't, then they don't align with F5.
Okay. You just mentioned TikTok, and I hope marketers in the room, you're taking note, 8 hours on TikTok. So, as a digital native yourself, could you please share 3 hacks with us to resonate with Zoomers or Gen Z on digital and social media?
I think number 1 is to make sure you're engaging with your customer. So whether it be making TikToks that relates to them, or posting an Instagram picture where it's like, okay, this is summer and it's summer now and now we're all gonna travel, so something to do with that. I think it's very, very important to engage with them. And second of all, being on all platforms is extremely important. You can't be on TikTok but not on Snapchat. You can't be on Snapchat but not on Instagram.
But the language has to be different.
The language
approach
has to be
different, right?
Of
Any
course.
examples that come to mind, Sarisha, from stuff that you've done, of course?
I think for Snapchat, for example, it's more of a daily life usage where people can show what they do on the daily. I do that myself. I do it with my brand, where we're showcasing how we run our brand, how we do all of this, whereas Instagram is more for, okay, this is coming on and this is there forever, whereas Snap is like 24 hours and that's it. So I think that's the 2 things. Like, it's just very important to target the apps differently.
I see a lot of these brands that are truly interested to engage with their audience, go live from time to time. How important do you think is that? Do you leverage that at all?
I don't think going live is the best, just because of the fact that I've seen it with other brands, and also because no one wants to sit there and watch you talk for 3 hours on a live. No one's that interested or that bored in their life. And that's it, honestly. I think it doesn't make that big of an impact unless you're doing something that someone has never done before.
Sure. What has worked, one strategy that has worked tremendously well for your brand on social media? able to
I think
share?
on social media there would be, I think it's all the different looks that we do for each season to showcase, okay, to our customers that this is what we can do for this season, this is what you can wear, and this is an outfit that you can get. So I think that engaging to a customer on that level is extremely important. That's what helped us.
Wonderful. And staying with Gen Zs, this is also a cohort where research and studies indicate that they are very willing to pay a premium for sustainable products. So, did you build F5 to resonate only with this cohort? And do you see the brand eventually resonating with other generations as well? Elder millennial, example, and other generations. Have you had to make tweaks?
I think there were many tweaks that had to be made, whether it be with the style or whether it be with the material. Each generation wants something else. So, for example, for kids, we have a more playful range, whereas for adults, we have a more sophisticated range. So I think that's extremely important, and yeah.
Any perspective on price points? How does that work? How does that reasoning work among your customers?
I think price points for sustainability clothing shouldn't be as high as other brands have put it, just because sustainability is something that everyone wants to support, and if you're promoting it, then it shouldn't just be for the profit.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Are you doing anything specifically to rather make your collections affordable so that more people can access, more people can buy?
I think we do a lot of different giveaways, as well as we create collections which are more affordable and which are a little bit lower than our normal price point to be able to resonate with each customer. So, yeah.
I'm also curious to know when that first customer bought from F5. How did you feel? And do you remember who that customer was?
I actually do remember because it was my dad.
Oh, is it?
And he came into the store in Athletes & Co. in Dubai Mall, and he was my first customer. It was the first day I'd opened. And I looked at him and I was like, and we were giving away plants that day, and I was like, so do you want this plant? And he's like, nope, you can keep it. So I was like, so then he's like, I wanted to be your first customer to show you that I'll always have your support no matter what. So I think that was very,
so
very
encouraging.
important.
Of course, of course. F5 is a sustainable brand at its core, and you collaborate with a lot of these local organizations. You're part of a lot of local initiatives. So can you tell us, can you run through some of your initiatives, some of your recent collaborations, maybe, how you're trying to make a change in the local communities first and then drive those big environmental goals?
So I think the most recent one we did was the Dubai Cares, where children actually were told to draw what they thought about sustainability, and then we put those on T-shirts and then actually gave the profits back to those children for their education. So I think that's one of our biggest initiatives and one of my favorites for sure. And being in the local community is always extremely important, especially for a brand that was made in the UAE and sells here. I think living here all my life, I've learned that I am how I am because I grew up here. So I think that's very important to me.
Sure. One of the more recent collaborations that I absolutely stunning photographs and very lovely videos of your collaboration with this Sharjah-based school where children did doodles that you carry on your range.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit more about that?
That was the exact Dubai Cares one.
Okay, that was fantastic. That was so cool.
Thank you.
Moving a little bit away from the brand Sarisha, as I mentioned towards the beginning of the conversation, you're a second-generation entrepreneur. And your parents are two very accomplished retail leaders, Mr. Nilesh Ved and Mrs. Seema Ved. And you have a sister who's an entrepreneur as well now, Serena Ved, who runs Nessa. Do you feel the pressure to perform all the time? Do you have these, dinner table conversations about business. How does it work?
I think majority of my conversations with them are about business, but there's never any pressure to perform well. I think it's more motivation. We'll talk about ideas, we'll talk about how we can market different, what different collaborations I could do, how I could help my sister, how my sister could help me. I think it's all about using our resources and combining them to make the best out of all of our companies.
Wonderful. Are you encouraged to take risks, to chart out your own path, instead of feeling constrained by this strange fear of failure?
I think my parents are the first to tell me, you have to take a risk. Like, you don't have a choice, we're not going to guide you. Well, they do guide me, but we're not going to stop you from making this decision on your own. And that comes with a lot of independence that I get from my parents, where it's like, you have to understand and you have to learn by yourself. We made our mistakes, we learned how to do it the right way, now it's your turn. So yeah.
Can you recollect a mistake that taught you to be resilient, take better decisions?
I think one of the biggest, not mistakes I would say, but issues that I did have with the brand was when COVID hit. And I had, my manufacturer actually got COVID and was not able to produce my line for 3 months. Okay. So I think that, instead of a mistake, was a learning lesson for me to always have a plan B and a backup plan, because there was no way I could open a store with no clothing. So I think, yeah, that's one of my biggest points. And then finding a manufacturer in the span of a week to be able to produce a line in a month was insane, but it was worth it.
I have a follow-up question there. Do you opt for local sourcing?
Now we do, yeah.
And
Before,
what percentage would that be?
I think it would be like around 80%.
Okay. It'll also be interesting to know, what do you find most inspiring about your parents? I mean, they have different traits, different characteristics. What is it that inspires you the most?
I think both of them are extremely different and polar opposites, in my opinion. I think what inspires me the most from my mom is how strong-headed she is and how she knows what she's doing and she knows when it's time to take a break. And from my dad, I think it would be the hard work and how much effort and how I saw him build his business from when I was born up until now and seeing the difference. So I think that's also one thing from my dad. And always, my dad has this thing to always push me to do the best. Like, he will never be okay with mediocre.
But no pressures though, yeah.
No, not pressure, it's more motivation.
Amazing. There's one thing that I recollect very fondly. It's one of the things that one of my mentors once told me. We run a lot after perfection to get everything done in the most perfect way. But sometimes what that leads to is you run late. So you run late to open a store, you run late to launch a collection. Are you a believer in this, perfectionist syndrome, or are you okay to launch something which is near perfect, and if it works, then great. If it does not, you take feedback and you perfect it.
I think everything takes time to get perfect. Whether it be years, whether it be months, you can't stop something just because it's not perfect then, but there will always be challenges. Nothing will ever be perfect. A store can never be perfect. You'll be running low on stock, then you'll have IT issues, you'll have all of that. So I'm not a believer that everything should be perfect.
Amazing. So the F5 store at Dubai Hills Mall. For our audience, can you walk us through a few elements in that store? What can they expect when they visit you next? And do visit F5 Global as soon as you can.
So we have a sewing machine there where you can actually engrave your own initials. And I think our T-Surfees line that's there is amazing. It's the best line I've ever seen, and it's my favorite line. I have my friends who wear it every single day. We had a senior car wash yesterday, and 20 of my friends are wearing Artis Sophie's collection. So I think those two are our main points.
Okay. Wonderful. So 2 years down, 3 years down, where would you want to see F5? What are those big goals?
I think for F5, I would want it to be a global brand for sure. It is in the Middle East now, but expand to America and Europe for sure. I think that's two things that I've always been wanting to do, and I've always been wanted to recognize as that. But I also want my brand to have built a school somewhere or a village somewhere to be able to help kids, not just by giving it to charities, but doing it ourselves as well.
Sure. Any concrete plans in the pipeline for both?
We shall see in the near future.
All right. So, and this will be my last question, Sarisha. There are these iconic brands with great recall, okay? What is that one word that should come to people's mind when they think of F5, let's say a decade down or so?
I think the word would be community. I think it's built by the community for the community. And I think that's one word I would always want to resonate with my brand.
Amazing, and all the best. Ladies and gentlemen, can we hear it one more time for this 17-year-old entrepreneur amongst us?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Ladies, congratulations. And Rup, you're amazing. Now, I worked with RupkathaBhowmick a long, long time ago, many years ago.
You held my hand.
I told you I'd hold your hand. She was a bit nervous about coming on stage. But
As
Sarisha
always.
put you at ease. Well done. Thank you very much. Ladies, well done
Thanks so
indeed.
much.
Lovely story as well.
Thank you.